Hey folks, you're watching another episode of Winston Walks. We're here today in Midtown Toronto. We're in the Yonge and Lawrence area. So I'm gonna walk around this area. As you can see, it's not really filled with condos yet. Granted, there is I'll show you this big, they I don't remember what was here years ago, but I have a feeling condos are starting to go up here. This area isn't cheap. So here's Bellwood. We're gonna walk, and we're gonna talk a little bit of the economic situation in Toronto, and also for you sports card fans out there. There's this place here, Relics, and I just checked it out. It's got some. It's mostly newer stuff, but they have a little bit of vintage and stuff. They've got an A6 Clear Jordan rookie. They've got an Ore. So check it out. You know what? That's their website. They seem like nice people. And then in terms of economics, we've got obviously a lot going on right now. Where my apologies. I haven't been posting as much as I'd like to. We're getting ready for a bunch of things, so there'll be much more content as well. But a lot of economic things have been happening. Canada is essentially stagnant to / a per capita GDP per capita recession, right? So our economy is really just staggered. The government, so it's funny with housing, which I know is a popular topic for everybody. So condo rents are going down. Well, rents in general are going down in Toronto. I mentioned this before. It's funny. I know a lot of the realtors now are getting on it and stuff on YouTube. I see this stuff on the ground, and it's kind of an obvious trend. So rents are going down in general. Condo prices are going down in Toronto. Freeholds are not as much yet, but freeholds I found are more lived in by, I guess, in terms of like the boomer generation, maybe Gen Xers as well. And no one's flipped yet because, folks are still, hoping for that big, I'm going to go if they're not going to go. They're hoping for even more in terms of a price squeeze, because prices have come down noticeably, but people are still looking for highs, essentially, right? So the Bank of Canada's cut interest rates now, which is quite unusual if you look in history, where they're raising, and then they usually would pause for a long period of time. And again, my background as well is in finance, so I've I don't want to show any bias or anything. It's just that I follow economics from that sense. So the Bank of Canada typically doesn't usually act in this erratic nature, unless it was like the 07-08 crisis, where they raised into it and then they ended up cutting into it right after, and then pretty much it's led to another housing bubble, ironically. And it's interesting, a Dollarama here, but I guess with prices and everything, it's understandable. In terms of the Bank of Canada, so they're cutting. They cut 50 basis points, and then they're expected to cut again. And which would help variable rate mortgages, lines of credit, the financing that way. With fixed rate mortgages are actually based on the long-term bond rate. So depending on, again, I know I have a lot of international viewers. but depending on when you borrow a mortgage from the bank, so if you're in the States, you've got very long duration loans, so it's going to be match up to the 30-year bond yield. So basically, if you think about your bank, when you borrow money from for your mortgage from the bank, they don't like pull it out from the back of their vault, right? What they do is they have to sell these bonds, these IOUs, into the market to get that money. And what they do is they use their credit worthiness to get a lower yield. So they pay less, let's say, to borrow, let's say whatever you need, $1 million, right? And then they charge you, X plus whatever, to borrow that $1 million from them. And then essentially they're hoping that you pay it, and then they keep the spread, right? So essentially that's how, banking should work. I know there are certain derivatives that are used, but that's how typically money is generated, right? So this is why, in terms of so when you're in the market, okay, and you are buying these bonds, right? So you're buying these IOUs essentially that you're assessing the quality of the person who wants to borrow the money, and then obviously if they're more risky, you want a higher rate of compensation for your risk, right? And thus if they're more if they're less risky, then you'll take a little less, and that's okay, right? So anyways, but also what you're going to also do is that you're going to assess future opportunity costs. So think of it like inflation rates, right? So if you're anticipating that inflation is going to rise, and then the bank's going to have to end up raising rates in the future, if your bond is for, let's say, 10 years or 30 year or 25 year, then you're going to want a higher rate of interest, right, to lock into that period. Because then why would you lend it for a lower rate when you can just wait and get a higher one, right? So anyways, that's how the bond market works. And I'm sorry I probably lost 90% of my audience, even though frankly my channel is not big. But essentially that's how bonds work, right? So when your bank, so what's been happening is that when the Bank of Canada and Federal Reserve and the European Union and the Chinese, the central bank, they're all cutting rates, okay? So what they're doing is they're essentially pumping liquidity into the market, right? So they're trying to stimulate the economies, right? Even though I could argue that when I go to the supermarket, when I see prices of certain things, they still haven't, they're still pretty high, and frankly, they're still accelerating. I know the stated rate of inflation is a certain amount, they say, but there's a lot of manipulation in how those reports are generated, right? And typically it's because they don't want to pay a higher rate of increase on pensions, because pensions are a big expense for the government, right? So in Canada, think of your CPP, right? Social Security in the States, right? So anyways, so what's happening, an interesting phenomenon is that as the Bank of Canada and all the other central banks are cutting interest rates, fixed rates, the bond interest rates are actually going up, okay? Because people want to be compensated for future inflation, which potentially means future interest rate hikes, right? Because the central banks haven't been consistent in years, right? They're cutting and then they're raising and then they're cutting again. So that's the issue, right? So with that said, you have the government right now, our government, and again, not being political, what they are doing is, they're introducing all these different programs to stimulate housing for first-time home buyers, for developers, etc. Because, in Canada, the philosophy is that's how they're going to stimulate the economy, right? That is, that's our method, essentially, because there was Justin Trudeau who gave an interview a while back where he talked about how most retirees have their net worth in homes. So he can't let homes fall because essentially he would destroy retirees' funds, essentially their nest egg, right? But in turn, that also number one, you can't. Well, nothing rises. Like trees don't grow to the endlessly into the sky, to the moon, whatever you want to call it. So that's one thing, and then also, obviously, people have to take on bigger mortgages to actually finance these purchases, right? And thus bigger payments, bigger interest rates. Eventually what you're going to do is you're going to have a system of where people are just paying massive payments of mortgages on their mortgages, and they have no extra money to actually spend in the economy, right? And you can look at certain economies, phenomenons like in Japan in the 1980s. They actually had a super bubble in their real estate market, in a lot of their equity markets as well, and it all came crashing down. And frankly, they if you get a chance, look at the prices of houses in Japan. You'll be shocked because they've had deflation for like 40 years, 50 years, and their housing prices are really low compared to ours, because, well, frankly, they never go up. So even if you bought a house, you're going to live it. You're not going to buy it to for capital growth, right? So, anyways, sorry, I know I'm rambling on in this one, but it's very interesting. But so what's going on is now, like, so the government's trying to stimulate through real estate. They've introduced all these different programs. They're letting first-time home buyers, and I think they're expanding it, but essentially what are insured mortgages by the government. So I guess like a Fannie and Freddie in the States. So they're letting amortizations go up to 30 years, right? Who knows how, they're going to probably increase that as well. And then the amounts as well, they're going to do up to 1.5 million. Granted, you still have to qualify with a proper income. But, I do know that with banks, people have sales targets, and what they do is, they will manipulate things, right? Or sometimes they'll accept things that are a little suspect, and they look the other way. That's just the reality of it. I'm not saying it's right, but that's just the reality of it. So, you'll get that type of, essentially I guess that's actions to support also, these government programs that are being put in place. And then, frankly, if everything blows up, the Canadian taxpayer, whether you own a home or you don't, is going to be on the hook for it, right? So, and we are heavily taxed here. We are extremely heavily taxed here. And that tax burden could probably end up going up further. So, what is interesting, those things that I've mentioned, hey, that's New Scotia Bank there. I haven't seen that one, that branch built up. What's interesting is that, so those are the kind of the announcements that they've made to support, like, the economy and housing, because, like, our economy, like I mentioned, is really slow. People are not, the raises are really small, or people are losing their jobs. Businesses, a lot of them are closing down. I do walks downtown. A lot of the places there's empty storefronts, which when I was younger it would never be the case. But and even up here, like, this is a more affluent neighborhood, but you still see some interesting things here. weren't the case before. So, anyways, getting back to the now in terms of the interesting thing that they announced recently. Oh, it's a Wingstop. So what they announced also in Canada. So one big thing that's been driving real estate for years, is the argument about immigration, right? So you hear real estate agents talking about, everything going to the moon because of immigration. Immigrants are coming, okay? And obviously Canada has always relied on immigrants, and the problem being is that when we kind of flooded, like we let multiples of our population, well, not multiples, but a big percentage increase in our population, all at once, or in a pretty small period of time, right? What happens is that, so number one, from a total GDP perspective, you're gonna see an improvement from a government perspective. So, our finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, she's always bragged about that, we've had the best GDP in the G7, right? Even though per capita, it's actually fallen, right? But obviously politics is politics. She's gonna toot her horn, However, so with immigration, but it's so obvious where, like I've shown you folks, the city, at least in Toronto. I don't know about other cities, but from what people have told me, it's getting bad there too. But the quality of life has gone down, right? Crime is up. Inflation's pretty heavy. People just can't survive here, frankly. And I actually think bringing people here is it's a cruel thing because they don't have a chance, frankly, right? And we have a cold climate. Like, it's actually getting colder now, and so people don't, well, anyway, so what they're doing is they're actually reversing it, and they're reducing the amount of immigration, and then they're also now going to be more particular in terms of who they allow in. So essentially, without, basically they want people with money to come. Money or a high skill set, right? Versus, I don't really mean, but like, we have, a lot of folks now, who do a lot of the deliveries and things like that here, right? That we didn't have years ago, right? A lot of the students that, are they're just not there yet. So they're going to be quote unquote more selective in terms of, the immigration, and then they're also cutting obviously the numbers down big time, right? What they don't mention is that there are a lot of people leaving Canada. I know a lot of people who leave Toronto because of the tax rates, because of the quality of life and what you get. Like, if you pay, there's another great YouTuber, I hope she doesn't mind me saying, but her name is Alina McLeod, and she does a lot of travel stuff, right? And she's, I know she traveled around. She's Canadian, and I think she traveled around. I think for a while there she was living in Toronto, and I think she was thinking about, like settling in Toronto. But then she came and realized, when she came back, she realized that things changed so much, right? So she's moving, elsewhere, right? Because of the dollar value of what you can get. So, that's a great example. And obviously, she's an intelligent woman. She's done her work. If you watch her content, she's actually does some videos of she outlines the costs, which are crazy. Sorry, so there's a truck coming, so I don't want to get hit. But anyways, that's kind of the idea of what you're getting, right? And she does well for herself, but wouldn't you want your dollar to stretch further, right? Plus it is a little bit, it's getting crazy down here too. But anyway, so with that all in, Okay, but granted, I've heard a lot of people are skeptical about the cut in immigration because again, because of the whole GDP. We've got an election possibly next year, possibly earlier, and the government is doing anything and everything to hold on. So with that said, with real estate, so you remember you have all these people tying up their big amounts of money into mortgages. A lot of their retirement funds are in homes. So like, downtown, a lot of the homes are like $1 million plus, right, which is crazy, right? A cute dog. But hey, lots of dogs here. So think about it now. Now you have less people coming, or possibly people, net on net, people estimate that there's actually be a negative population growth, right, once they do this, right? So you can see where there's a big trap coming for a lot of people, because I know Canadians, a lot of people believe that real estate never goes down. I've had that conversation, right? But I mean, every asset goes down. Every stock will eventually go down. Every collectible, every etc. Right? At some point, it does go down. Right? Nothing goes up straight, linear, to the moon. Right? Unless it's I guess a GIC in perpetuity, but it's not really cashable. Right? Well, cashables, I guess, but anyways. But then if you cash it early, anyways, the whole point of it is that you understand what I'm saying. So you'll have all these people with these properties, right? And it's one thing if you're living in them, okay, like these neighborhoods here, okay. But if you're speculating with them, with massive amounts of debt, right? What happens? So if the prices of these properties fall, your mortgages don't fall. The debt doesn't fall. The bank still wants the amount of money, and they want the interest rate, right? So, that's a big problem, right? And then also the fact, when you think about it too, I talked about how the Bank of Canada and the central banks are all cutting rates, right? So what they're doing is, if you look at commodity markets, gold is at a new high, and gold is generally a precursor to higher inflation, right? The currency here is falling as well. So when you think about that too, it's actually costing us more to purchase items, imported items from anywhere. Because let's be honest, nowadays, we're buying it obviously from other countries. Right, so as the loonie weakens, right? So with all that being said, when you add all that in together, so let's say it is higher inflation because of the fact that the loonie is weakening. Commodity prices overall are going up. Internationally, who knows? I hate the fact that people are dying. And I don't want to, take it down to like just a dollar point, but like, I hate to say it, but like war equals like higher oil prices in the Middle East, right? If you add that all in, you're going to get higher inflation in the future. So if you do that, and then the central banks realize that, oh wow, we're in trouble, we need to, increase interest rates now, right? You're going to have so many people with huge amounts of debt, and then now suddenly they're going to be in a situation where they're caught with large mortgages, possibly increasing, because in Canada we only have 5-year, the popular term is 5-year fixed terms, right? Not like in the States where it's 25. Okay guys, don't do this what I do, I'm gonna jaywalk. Oh, we're good anyways. So you could have a situation where you have falling housing prices. You could have a situation where your mortgage is massive, your payments are going up, especially on renewal. You know, this could be really, really, really bad. This could be a setup for like a really bad situation. And just, again, this is nothing political, but it's just looking from my economic background, just the studies and things like that. That's why I don't understand why, I guess people are buying because they think that the houses are going to keep going up, right? But also, there's an important metric when you look at history, that housing is based on incomes. It's the multiples of income, right? Instead of multiples of earnings or well, even cash flows. When you look at it from a rental perspective, it doesn't make sense. Well, here's sorry for my hobby people, and they're probably already gone by now. This is Paradise Comics, popular comic shop, but they're it's interesting. They're closed today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They only open by appointment, which kind of tells you again the economy. And then they're open 11 to 5 and 11 to 4 on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's surprising. But frankly, too, to hire people and to hire people and to have them working, it's quite a bit now, right? And folks are not doing, and comic books and sports cards had that boom. Collectibles, not so much now, right? So but also with one thing I will mention in terms of rentals, because I've heard the conversation about buying rentals, right? House hacking, etc. The problem is that when I sat down and I've done the work in terms of cash flows, and I wasn't even taking into consideration expenses of a home. I was just taking rents, just general taxes, because property taxes are going up as well in Toronto as well. We're a walking disaster, right? When you do the multiples, you take your rent multiple and you multiply it by 12, right? And you take some suitable, you can take some expenses away, but then there's some tax benefits from that, obviously. But when you even do that division, right, and that yield doesn't even give you a GIC rate, which is sad, right? So you can actually invest it in a GIC, guaranteed investment certificate. You'll get more without any of the worries of maintenance or of someone squatting on you as well. That's another big problem that happens in Toronto. So yeah, it's pretty bad. And in Canada too, you can't really walk away from your mortgage like they did in the States. I.e. The Big Short, people just threw their keys, right? It follows you around, so not the greatest thing. So anyways, that's why right now, just be really careful if you're down here, and if you hear a lot of the stuff that comes out, in the media, because a lot of the media is also, just look at their I don't know, I'm sounding like a wacko now, but just watch in terms of their their advertisers, because the real estate board, etc. They obviously have their agenda to sell, right? And right now no one's really selling because people don't want to lower their prices, but other people just quite frankly just don't have the capital, right? It's too expensive. And then if you get caught, like I said, this could really it could really screw up your life, right? You end up owing so much money, and how are you ever going to be able to get out of that? So anyways, this wasn't much of a walk about the neighborhood. This is a nice neighborhood, Yonge and Lawrence, but this is more an economics talk. So, but anyways, I don't know. I think I'm going to do some more of those as well, because I kind of like that. I like talking about it too, and sometimes I get frustrated seeing this stuff, and you know, this is a way for me to vent as well. So I'll get the walk. But anyways, I want to thank you folks for walking with me, and you know, probably for the few of you that actually listen to this, I thank you for listening to me. And my name is Winston. I take walks. I'm based in Toronto. You know, if you're a tourist, if you're someone who's thinking about moving here, especially if you're thinking about buying a house or a condo, or you just enjoy watching it, I hope you get something positive out of this. But thanks for walking with me, and I will see you in the next walk. Bye-bye.